So I got pulled over by the Georgia State Patrol this morning. And by now, thanks to the internet, the whole damn world knows that those boys don't play. You know, they'll pit maneuver their own granny and giggle the whole time. So naturally, when I realized one of them was coming after me today, my first thought was, I can lose him. There's just one little problem. I was on my son's mini bike. I'm 55 years old. And somehow that's not even the stupidest part of this story. Now, just so you know, I actually had to write this down. Normally, when I make these videos, I've just got some bullet points sitting in front of me. But not today. Because every time I think about what happened, I start laughing. And I know myself well enough to know if I try to tell you this from my usual bullet points, I'm going to wander off into 3 different stories about stupid shit that I did 30 years ago. And 20 minutes from now, I still won't have told you what happened today. So instead of my usual bullet points, I actually had to write myself a script. Now, whether I'll be able to stick to the damn thing or not remains to be seen. But anyways, this morning started out completely innocent. I got some parts in for my son's mini bike, so I spent the morning working on it. Got the parts all put on, got everything back together, got it running right, and obviously I had to test ride it. Now, I haven't ridden dirt bikes in years, but there was a time when I rode all kinds of stuff and even raced them. I raced dirt bikes and I had street bikes and ATVs and go-karts. I had it all. I loved anything with a motor that probably had more horsepower than I had common sense. But I gave all of that up years ago. So I climb on this stupid little mini bike and start riding it around the property, just testing it. That's all I'm doing. I'm being a responsible father, making sure his son's mini bike is working right. At least that's what I was telling myself. But then something happened. I got the itch. And anybody who used to ride motorcycles knows exactly what I'm talking about. You can go years without doing it. And then you get back on something with 2 wheels and a motor, and suddenly some part of your brain goes, oh yeah, I remember this. So I'm riding around my property, and apparently, that just wasn't enough anymore. So that's when I came up with what seemed like a perfectly reasonable idea at the time. The corner store isn't very far from my house. The mini bike needed gas. I wanted a Dr. Pepper, and I'm pretty sure you can see where this is going. I thought I'd just ride it up there. Put a little gas in it, grab a Dr. Pepper, ride it home. Done. Now, did I have any idea that I wasn't supposed to be riding this thing down the road? Absolutely. But, there was never any confusion about that. I didn't accidentally find myself on a public road. I'm 55 years old. I knew exactly what I was doing. But hey, I live out in the sticks. In the sheriff's department around here, they generally don't care too much about little shenanigans like this. And Georgia State Patrol? Well, we never see them out here. Well, almost never. Because apparently, while I was putting parts on a mini bike this morning, the universe was somewhere saying, what would make this interesting? Well, here we go. So off I go, and I'm having myself a pretty good time. I get to the store without an incident, put a little gas in it, get my Dr. Pepper, and I start heading back home. At this point, this has been a completely successful mission. The mini bike runs great. I've got gas. I've got my Dr. Pepper. I'm having a great time. And I'm almost home. What could possibly go wrong? And then, there he is. GSP. Now, like I said, we don't normally see them around here. So at first I was thinking, well, that's unusual. Then I realized, uh-oh, he's coming after me. And I wish I could tell you that at 55 years old, with all the life experience I've accumulated, that my first thought was, Ron, you should safely pull to the side of the road and cooperate with the officer. But it wasn't. My first thought was, I can lose him instantly. And here's why that's even worse. When I was young, I ran from them. Cars, bikes, ATVs, all the time. And most of the time got away. Now, those days are gone. And I'm not saying it like I'm proud of it. It was stupid. I knew it was stupid then, but I did it. Anyways, apparently, the part of my brain responsible for those decisions never actually left. He's just been sitting quietly in the back somewhere for the last 30 or so years, waiting for another opportunity. And today, he saw Georgia State Patrol and went, this is our moment. For about half a second, I genuinely thought I can lose him. Then, thankfully, the 55-year-old part of my brain finally showed up and said, yeah, okay, dumbass. Let's think this through. These guys run down Hellcats. They run down sport bikes. You know, most of you have all seen the videos, and I've seen it firsthand. They'll chase somebody doing 140 miles an hour and pit them into next Tuesday without spilling their coffee. They don't care if you live or die. They're going to stop you. And you know, what exactly are you working with here? Your son's mini bike. You know, I don't even know what my escape plan was or would have been. You know, at 6'1", sitting on this stupid little mini bike, where the hell am I going to hide? Behind a mailbox? You know, maybe if I tuck my knees in, he won't see me. So, after approximately half a second of considering one of the dumbest ideas I've had in quite some time, I did something remarkable. I pulled over. Apparently, we can learn. Just takes some of us 55 years. So now I'm sitting on the side of the road on the mini bike, holding a Dr. Pepper, and I watch this GSP officer get out of his car. And as he's walking toward me, I already know how this looks. There's no explanation that's going to make this look any better. He walks up, looks at me, looks at the mini bike, looks back at me, and he says, "Are you freaking kidding me right now?" And I'm already, you know, trying not to laugh. Then he says, "You're older than my father. Tell me you don't know better." Well, you know, that was hurtful. I mean, I'm already pulled over on a mini bike. There's no reason to bring my age into this. But he's absolutely right. You know, so I told him the truth. I said, "Oh, I know better." I thought about it for a second and said, "Hell, I knew better even when I was younger than you." And I could see it. He's trying not to laugh too. So I figured, you know, hell, we're already here. Might as well go with complete honesty. I said, "But my God, man, sometimes you got to live a little." And that did it. He started, he busted out laughing. And then he says to me, "I thought I'd heard it all, but that's the most honest thing anybody has said to me since I've started my career." And now we're both standing on the side of the road laughing about the fact that, well, I'm apparently old enough to be this man's father, and he's having to tell me not to ride a mini bike down the road. Then he asks, "Where do you live?" So I point up the road. I said, "Right there, less than a quarter mile." He looks up the road, looks back at me again, and says, "Well, get there before I do, and you get a pass." Now, I'm going to tell you something. When a GSP officer gives you instructions like that, you don't ask follow up questions. I didn't ask. Do you mean right now? I didn't ask. Are you serious? I damn sure didn't ask. What's the speed limit you have in mind? I fired that little sucker up and I hauled ass home. Now, considering what I told you at the beginning about my younger years, there's something incredibly funny about the fact that after all these years, I finally found a GSP officer who actually told me go. And this time I listened. I made it back to the house, no ticket, no handcuffs, no mini bike stinking out of the trunk of a patrol car. And most importantly, I still had my Dr. Pepper. I sat there afterward, thinking about the whole thing and I couldn't stop laughing. Because at 55 years old, I have children, but I'm supposed to be the responsible one. And today I get pulled over by a GSP, on a mini bike, during a Dr. Pepper run. And my first instinct was still, I can lose him. Which I'm not going to lie is a little concerning. But here's the good news. I didn't. I pulled over. So apparently I have matured. It took 55 years. The bar was extremely low, but progress is progress. And now I'm just waiting for my son to ask me how the mini bike did because technically I did exactly what I set out to do this morning. I installed the part, I tested it. I even tested it under some conditions I hadn't, necessarily planned for. So I can keep most of that away from him. So I can honestly report back to him and say it runs great. Y'all, thanks for hearing this. This isn't my normal video, but I had to share it. Y'all, I'll see you in the next one.